Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we're going to talk about Texas, a term, and teaching history. Because there was a proposal to introduce some new terminology to history classes there. And the term they wanted to introduce was involuntary relocation. There are a lot of points in American history where that is an appropriate term, because that's what happened, right? The problem is, in this case, they wanted to use the term involuntary relocation as a substitute for the slave trade. Yeah, I don't think that fits. That doesn't seem appropriate. Now, luckily, the Department of Education there in Texas, they agree, and they kind of shot this down, sent it back, and was like, yeah, you need to work on this term. And good that they shot this down. But let's talk about how we got to this point. Why is there a push to introduce this terminology or similar terminology? What's the goal? To soften it. That's the goal. The goal is to make the hideous blot of slavery seem a little bit more palatable. Why? Because a whole bunch of people got together and decided, oh, we don't want history taught critically. We don't want students to know the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the hideous of American history. We just want them to feel good about themselves. We just want them to feel good about the country. They don't want American history taught. They want American mythology. They want propaganda taught. And they want it packaged as if it was history. And if you do this, if this is allowed to stand, and this continues, eventually, well, it takes on whatever meaning the new term is going to be. And that's what people will think. What happens to a student who is told that slavery, the slave trade, was involuntary relocation? What happens to them when they start studying the 1900s and they find out about the Tennessee Valley Authority? Because that was involuntary relocation. That's what happened. They were forced to relocate, right? But I'm pretty sure they weren't beat, whipped, and had their children sold. Why do you want to downplay this? And the answer is, they want American mythology. They want a package that they can sell. They want to relate to the bad guy. That's what it's about. They've decided that their heroes couldn't have been wrong. They couldn't have been people who did horrible things, hideous things in their own words. They were heroes, so they're infallible. Rather than just acknowledging they were villains. They were the bad guy. American history is full of people who spoke out and stood up against that hideous blot. But they're barely mentioned. Because a large portion of the American population wants to identify with certain characters in American mythology. I don't want to say people in American history because that's not what they teach. They want to identify with this mythical version of people that actually existed. They want to identify with this heroic figure and forget about all of the other stuff that they did. Even when they themselves said it was hideous. If this happens, if we allow those who are terrified of the truth, those who want their children ignorant, to succeed, And they can soften the language with which we teach history. Make no mistake about it, our grandchildren will make the same mistakes because they won't know any better, because they won't understand there's a difference between being told you have to move because this valley's going to flood and slavery. This is what happens when you fall into bumper sticker politics, some slogan, when you allow a term, CRT, to be demonized and you don't know what it is. This is the outcome. Of course, the children are going to be less than educated. The parents refuse to educate themselves on things they're voting on. This is what will cause America to be less competitive, because they're not going to have any frame of reference for anything. History is important. You can't soften what happened. It was horrible. It was hideous. You can't just slap a new term on it and hope that people overlook it. We know what happened. If you want to avoid similar mistakes in the future, it has to be taught. People have to understand it in all of its horror. The United States is at a crossroad. And the most important thing right now is for the youth to be educated. Because educated people make better decisions. They're not played by some 2-bit con man. They understand the way the world works because they know what happened in the past. This is probably one of the most important fights right now. It's to make sure that the youth are educated, that they're not indoctrinated, that they're not fed some myth, that they're not lied to. But a whole bunch of people in the U.S. want to lie to their kids so they can feel good about some mythical version of a person that actually existed. There are no heroes. Not really. They were people. They were flawed. They did messed up stuff. And the only way to make your kids better is to make sure that they understand what happened then. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.